Hi everybody, Michelle McClunan here, an astrologer and life coach, and I'm bringing you an update for the solar eclipse on the 30th of April, which is a Saturday. And this is basically our entry point into eclipse season, which happens every year, twice a year. And this one is in Taurus. And basically what a solar eclipse is it's a new moon. You could call it a new moon on steroids. It is a solar eclipse is where the Earth blocks the light from the sun. So we could say, if we look at the sun and we look at the moon, we could say that the feminine actually starts to vanquish the masculine in a way, meaning the sun. And this is a very, very feminine new moon. There's very little masculine energy around. The feminine energy in astrology is earth and water, of which we have a lot this solar eclipse, and then the masculine is fire and air. There's no fire in this one. So following a month of Aries, where everything's been really, really fiery and really, really fast, this is a slower new moon in a way, but there's some activation in it as well. So I'll try and go through the themes for you as I kind of see them. So if we look at the new moon in Taurus, Taurus is a sign, it's a fixed earth sign. It's got to do with stability, security, our roots, where we find our stability from, where we find our security from. And this is also the sign that the nodes are actually moving through at the moment. So whenever we have an eclipse, the nodes are in the same signs. And the nodes are related to our past and our future, our destiny. This one is very aligned with our destiny point, which is the north node in Taurus. Okay, so we're moving towards something new, something different. And if we look at different themes for Taurus, Taurus rules our bodies, so it rules our health in a way. It rules our skeletal, our structures, our physical structures. It rules our resources. It also rules things like food and money and earnings. And this one is sort of being activated quite a lot. So what we have at this new moon or solar eclipse is that the sun and the moon are right next to the planet Uranus. Uranus being the planet of change. Now Taurus on its own is quite steady, quite slow, quite determined, very earthed, very grounded. But when Uranus is around, it kind of stirs things up. So I see Uranus almost like a bit of a lightning strike. It kind of goes gadoosh. That's what needs to change. Or that's what you need to see. It breaks through. So it's almost like lightning striking the earth and breaking it open so you can actually see what's there. And that's what it's felt like for a while. We generally feel the energy of a solar eclipse about a week or even more before it happens. So I'm assuming that some of you would have been feeling that. I know a lot of people that I know are moving through big stuff at the moment. A lot of stuff's coming up to the surface, and it can make us feel very wobbly about our security, about our stability, maybe about our mental stability, our emotional stability, not only our physical security and stability. So when Uranus actually forms into what we call a conjunction with the sun and the moon in Taurus, it's very much like that lightning strike breaking it open, so that we can see where our deepest insecurities lie, where our sense of self-worth isn't what it needs to be, where we undervalue ourselves. It points out, what do we value? Have our value systems changed? Are they still changing? What are our beliefs? All of those things are coming up at this time, and we can kind of expect probably some very sudden, possibly unpredictable issues on our earth. And I mean, that's no surprise, because that's what we've been surrounded with for years, especially the last 2 years. So that's on the one side. We've got this very big energy in Taurus. Taurus can be very stubborn as well. Taurus can get to a point where it doesn't want to let go, and Uranus comes in and says, no, it's time. It's time you actually look deeper, and it's time you let go of what you don't need, what's not working for you. The other thing about this new moon solar eclipse is that the planet Pluto, which I speak a lot about, Pluto's been in the news, as it were, for a long time now, because it's been very involved in the last 2 years and in what we've been experiencing. So Pluto stations, in other words, what it does is it appears from our perspective on Earth to actually stand still before it turns retrograde. And the retrograde cycle lasts a long time with Pluto, because Pluto has such an outer, very, very different, unusual orbit. So when Pluto stations, we feel its energy more deeply. And when it goes retrograde, what it'll do is it'll bring to the surface anything we haven't actually brought up to the surface that we've needed to. So that retrograde, this retrograde will last until October. And while it's doing so, it's crossing over the United States' Pluto, which means that the States is having its Pluto return, which is why there's so many interesting things happening in the States, and why so much is coming out to the surface. So Pluto rules things like money, power, sex, secrets, mysteries. So any of those things, a lot of those things are coming to light. And more people are waking up to what's actually been hidden underneath the surface. And this is all part of our human evolution. And we are going through a major shift in our evolution. So this is happening as well as the solar eclipse at the same time. And so what that does is it sort of, Pluto I always see as the plumber, kind of drills down wherever it's situated in your chart. It drills down at those degrees, because it moves very slowly. It takes a year to move just a degree or so. So it drills down. So for example, if you have a planet or planets at 28 degrees or 29 degrees of the cardinal signs, which would mean Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, or Aries, you would feel this more profoundly. So whatever planet you've got, if you've got a copy of your chart, you can look to see where that planet is, what that planet is. Or if you don't have planets at those degrees, you can look at the house that is happening in. So for example, it could be transiting through and has been there for a long time in your house of finance. So that could be something that's actually really coming up for you. It could be in the house of stability and safety. That could be something that's coming up for you. It could be in the house of relationships, which would mean that would be in the focus. You would be going to a deeper level of your understanding, of your process, of your evolution in that area of your life. So that's what's happening with Pluto, same time. At the same time, we have 4 planets in Pisces. And you might have seen some of them because there's been an alignment that is visible. Today I had a look and I could see Jupiter and Venus very early. So they, it's the morning star and Jupiter, which is really bright. So they're really bright. All of them are in the sign of Pisces. So this is bringing in the water. So we've got the solar eclipse, the new moon in Taurus, Earth, Pluto stationing at 28, 29 degrees Capricorn, Earth, and then we've got 4 of these planets in Pisces. So what is that saying? It's more feminine. It's more feminine. It's saying out the head, into the heart. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus rules love. Venus is associated with the heart. So the 4 planets in Pisces, it can be beautiful. It can open up the doorway to a huge amount of intuition, creativity, imagination, connection. Some people might be having visions, might be much more sensitive than normal. If you found that, I certainly have. So there's a lot more sensitivity. There might be a lot more tears. There can be a lot more confusion as well. Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. And we've got 4 planets there, including 2 of the biggest ones. I mean, in terms of their effect, Jupiter and Neptune, which only come together once every 165 years. And then these are aligned with Mars and Venus, which are the personal planets. So it makes it quite personal. It brings it in. It brings in that Pisces energy into our relationships, male and female. There can be confusion about our relationships. There can be confusion in our communications with other people. There can be confusions about, again, how do we get it? How do we find security? If we feel lost at sea, and that can breed anxiety. And I know that a lot of people are dealing with a lot of anxiety at the moment. I do believe there are also is a lot of solar flares and solar action and all sorts of light codes apparently coming onto the planet, which our bodies, Taurus, are trying to readjust to. So just be cognizant of that and be kind to yourself, because it's not easy. This is new energy, and we're being called on to deal with energy in a different way, to make decisions in a different way. So the Pisces planets are actually saying what intuitively feels like the way to go. And if you're not getting clear intuition, to be aware of any signs you might be getting. And that might be signs through dreams. Or it might be that somebody phones you out the blue and gives you information. Or it could be a literal sign, a symbol that aligns and says, yes, that gives me the answer. So I think be very open to those, as opposed to trying to make rational, linear decisions, because this isn't really a rational, linear time. It's much more feminine, which can mean it's a lot more chaotic, but it's also a lot more open. So it's to open. And I've spoken before about the taproot, and this is it. This is the solar eclipse where we get to deal with, where is our taproot? Where do we find our security? Do we find it in our money, in our job, in our home? And if we do, what if those things disappeared? What if they changed to a degree that we didn't even recognize them anymore? Then how stable would we feel? And this is really what we're being asked to see, is that our stability doesn't come from those things, even though it feels like it does. It feels like it does from this perspective of being human. But really our stability comes from within. So during these times, to ask ourselves, who am I really beyond the physical? So if the physical stuff disappears, who am I? If I can no longer do the job I do, who am I? If I don't have the same amount of money that I used to have, because our monetary system's changing, make no mistake. Uranus is moving through Taurus. Taurus rules our food supplies and our monetary system. And those are both changing. There are massive food shortages all over the world. So this is a time where we need to be growing our own food. Uranus rules community. It suggests very strongly that we need to work in community to grow our own food, to become more sustainable. That's what the North Node in Taurus and this solar eclipse is asking us, is saying to us. It's giving us signs. It's saying, are you self-sustainable? Do you have your own water? Where is your water coming from? Where's your food coming from? If the food supply chain had to break down, what would you do for food? And these are questions that we don't want to ask ourselves, particularly when things are going fine. But it's a good idea to ask them, because if you look worldwide, there are shortages that can be caused by anything from earthquakes and natural disasters like what we've seen with the floods, right through to lockdowns and the rest. So the more sustainable that we can be, the better. And then on a higher level, it's really, these times are coaxing us to say, there's more. We are eternal beings. We're not this body. We're not this name. There's more. And kind of encouraging us to work with obstacles in a different way, to work with our triggers in a different way. A lot of people are being triggered at the moment. Old triggers that we thought that we had sorted out that anxiety long ago, all done. Not so much. It's coming up again for a lot of people. And if you're not going through that, just be compassionate to people who are, because it can sometimes feel very overwhelming and very, very scary when these almost panic attack feelings come in. So just to be compassionate to people that are moving through big stuff, and to be a support to them if you're feeling strong. I had a beautiful quote that I actually wrote about a few years ago when we had an eclipse, and it's by somebody called Marcia Sanita. And she says, this is really beautiful, especially with all the Piscean energy. When flowing water meets obstacles on its path, a blockage on its journey, it pauses. It increases in volume and strength, filling up in front of the obstacle and eventually spilling past it. Do not turn and run, for there is nowhere worthwhile to run to. Pause, build up your strength until the obstacle no longer represents a blockage. And I thought that was really good advice, because we tend to, when there's a challenge or when there's a blockage, we tend to just move forward and plunge forward and try and work it out, save it, salvage it, sort it out. And it's usually from our minds that we're doing that. Whereas if we just pause, allow that water to build, allow our strength to build, allow our taproot to go further into the soil, so that whatever obstacle there is, eventually is no longer an obstacle. It moves, it dissolves, it changes. We're stronger so that we can move through it. So I hope that helps. It's big energy. Take some time out. There's not a lot of fire at this one, so it's fine. Be a good idea to get outside, because we might feel a bit waterlogged or a bit stagnant. If you think of water and earth, it's a bit muddy. It's a bit like quicksand. So it's a good idea to get outside, get into the sun, get into nature. Just sit with the nature and let her nurture you. Or sit next to water, walk next to water, walk in the sunshine next to water if you can. Nurture yourself, nourish yourself, sustain yourself. Give yourself some love. Thank you for listening. John and I will be starting a new journey to freedom on the 2nd of June. We've put it out a little bit due to some technical stuff that we're doing. So we've given you a little bit more time, and the 2nd of June is going to be the launch date. We start with a free week called the Liberation Map Week, where we get to share an incredible map with you, which will help you to actually solidify and strengthen this taproot, this inner taproot, because we're in for a lot more change. Pluto only moves out of Capricorn, which is what this change and evolutionary change is about in 2024, I think. So up until then, there's going to be restructuring. There's going to be the old falling away, the crumbling of the old, more crumbling of the old. And so we're being called upon to really, really strengthen our inner resilience. And so we invite you to join us, because that's what we do on the journey. It's a 13-week journey. We also have our Inner Space community, and this month we are working on opening to beauty, which is a beautiful Taurian theme. Opening to the beauty. So this weekend, open to the beauty. If you'd like to join us on any of our journeys, just go to journeysofawakening.com. I'll put the link in the box below. If you'd like a session to see where this is all playing out in your chart, whether you've had a reading before or not, we'll be able to actually see where all this energy is playing out. You're welcome to let me know. Drop me a line, drop me an email, it's the best, or WhatsApp, and we can set up a session for you. Lots of love. Stay centered, stay grounded, and breathe.